Camera speed.
Sound production, take one.
Action!
Welcome to From Beneath the Hollywood Sign. If you love old movies, Hollywood history, or the golden age of filmmaking, you've come to the right place. This is the podcast that talks about amazing stories of Tinseltown from another era. Hear fascinating conversations with writer-producer Steve Cubine, who quite literally lives just beneath the Hollywood sign, and actress-writer Nan McNamara. Now your hosts, Steve and Nan.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of From Beneath the Hollywood Sign. Hi, Nan.
Hi, Steve.
Do you love the movie The Women?
Oh, one of my favorite movies.
One of my favorite scenes is when JOAN CRAWFORD is the gold-digging perfume counter girl, Crystal Allen, and she's trying to nab her a wealthy man.
Yep.
She has a coworker who is so memorable in that scene because she just sees right through her gold-digging ways and she calls her out.
She sure does.
And that character was played by the great Virginia Gray, who's a wonderful actress who I think is long forgotten. I mean, if she's remembered at all, it's probably for The Women, or she's known as the good luck charm of producer Ross Hunter, who seemed to put her in almost every popular movie in the mid-50s and 60s. So this week, I wanted to make Virginia Gray our star of the month.
Virginia Gray was born in the Echo Park area of Los Angeles on March 22nd, 1917. She was born into a showbiz family.
Oh, yeah, she was.
She was the youngest of three daughters. Her father, Ray Gray, acted in Mack Sennett's Keystone Cop comedies and later worked as an assistant director. The Gray home was frequently visited by Hollywood types, so I think that did influence Virginia's upbringing. Her father died when Virginia was just 8 years old. Her mother, Florence Gray, supported the family by becoming a negative cutter and later an editor at Universal Studios.
It's funny, we don't really have many negative cutters anymore. It's such a long-lost art form. I know it's coming back, but still.
Yeah.
I love it. It was probably inevitable that Virginia Gray would be an actress. Working on the Universal lot as an editor, her mother heard that the studio was casting the silent film version of Uncle Tom's Cabin, which of course came out in 1927. So Florence encouraged Virginia to audition, and she was cast in the role of Little Eva at just 10 years old. Big break for her.
Yeah.
And this became her screen debut. She made a few more films as a child before stopping to finish her education, but as a teen, she came back into movies in the 1930s, often playing bit parts in Chorus Girls, as she did in Dames, 1934, with Ruby Keeler, Dick Powell, and Joan Blondell. She really wallowed in these bit parts until she was assigned the female lead in a very low-budget 20th Century Fox Western called Secret Valley from 1937, opposite Richard Arlen. Now, this led to a contract with MGM Studios, and it was at MGM that Gray first met Clark Gable. This was in 1937. She was 20, he was 36. When she first met Gable, he was, of course, with his true love, Carole Lombard, but he took a liking to Gray as friends, and he admired her talent and her down-to-earth nature. In 1937, Gable was making the movie Saratoga when Jean Harlow suddenly took ill and died. Producers weren't sure how they were going to finish the film, so they decided to test three actresses to sort of come in and cover for Harlow. They would shoot her in long shots and cover her with hats and scarves, so you really couldn't see her face, but they needed somebody who kind of had the essence of Harlow to make it work. So they screen tested three actresses, Rita Johnson, Virginia Bruce, and Virginia Gray. Well, as Gray explained in a fan magazine, and this is a quote, "Because he thought I had ability and for no other reason, Gable agreed to make the test with me," which was very unusual at the time. He was very kind and very helpful, and I think we worked well together. Unfortunately, I didn't get the role, but Clark was very apologetic. He realized that when a girl is 20, she dreams and hopes a lot. So he came up to me one day and said, "I'm sorry, kid, that it didn't work out, but there'll be other pictures." And indeed there were.
The studio ended up using Mary Dees to cover for Harlow. Gable tried to help Gray in her early career, securing her roles in some of his films. Gray explained that this was all on the up and up. You know, at this point, he was still with Carole Lombard.
No hanky-panky.
There was no hanky-panky.
All innocent friendship.
She's quoted as saying he was engaged to Carole Lombard at the time. He was just being the nice, sweet guy he's always been. We'd see each other around the lot, and he'd always have a kind word. But tab that, folks, because we're going to have a lot more on Clark Gable
yes.
later. She continued to build her career, taking on small roles, including parts in director Victor Fleming's war drama Test Pilot, 1938, with Clark Gable and Myrna Loy, and Gable helped secure that role for her. In Rich Man, Poor Girl, 1938, she appeared with a young Lana Turner. The two became fast friends, and they eventually appeared in 6 films together, one of which was Dramatic School, 1938, where they played 2 of the drama students alongside Louise Reiner, Paulette Goddard, and Anne Rutherford.
As Gray began to gain traction at MGM, the studio decided to cast her in one of their Andy Hardy movies, The Hardys Ride High, 1939, where she played a gold-digging debutante. And we've mentioned this before, but MGM loved to test out, I call them test drives, these young starlets.
Yes.
And they would test drive them in these Andy Hardy movies.
Right.
Throughout the years, they tried out Lana Turner and Judy Garland and Katherine Grayson and Donna Reed and Esther Williams all kind of got started in Andy Hardy movies, which is interesting.
Yeah.
So they were going to do this for her, for Virginia. Well, once again, upon Clark Gable's recommendation, she's cast in a very nice supporting role in the great film Idiot's Delight, 1939, where she played one of the Les Blondes, the chorus girls who back up Gable as he sang and danced to the iconic Puttin' on the Ritz number. That same year, she also appeared in Broadway Serenade, 1939, with Jeanette MacDonald and Lou Ayres, The Women, which we mentioned earlier, with Norma Shearer, Joan Crawford, and Rosalind Russell, and Another Thin Man, 1939 also, with William Powell and Myrna Loy.
As the 1940s began, Gray began alternating between supporting parts in A movies and lead roles in B movies. Some of her films included Hullabaloo, 1940, with Frank Morgan, The Big Store, 1941, a Marx Brothers comedy where she played it straight, Blonde Inspiration, 1941, opposite John Shelton, and she's quite memorable as the nightclub singer who helps Tarzan, played by Johnny Weissmuller, and Jane, played by Maureen O'Sullivan, rescue Boy, who was kidnapped by circus owners to be a new attraction.
Oh, not Boy.
I know. That's the Tarzan film called Tarzan's New York Adventure,
It's actually one of my
1942.
favorite of all
Yeah.
the Tarzan movies. I love that one. Now, one of my favorite movies that Virginia Gray is in is Whistling in the Dark from 1941. And this was part of a movie series that starred Red Skelton as the star of a mystery radio program and Anne Rutherford as his plucky and patient girlfriend. Now, Virginia Gray was brought in to play a radio sponsor's daughter who has eyes for Skelton. Of course, this causes all kinds of romantic complications, especially with not so happy Anne Rutherford nipping at your bud about this new blonde. Now, Anne Rutherford, who acted with Gray in, I think, 5 films total, she remembered her as a nifty lady. That's a quote. And this is another quote. She was blonde and lovely. The camera adored her. There was not a bad angle on her face. The key to her success, Rutherford said, was that she was so flexible. She could play the girl next door or somebody's other woman. And that is what kept her working.
Which makes sense when
Yeah.
you have that kind of range.
Versatility, yeah.
So on January 2nd, 1942, Carol Lombard dies tragically in a plane crash while off selling war bonds. Her husband, Clark Gable, was so distraught that he joined the Air Force and was shipped to England, where he produced a film to attract recruits for aerial gunnery training. Virginia Gray also became involved in the war effort. She was a regular hostess at the Hollywood Canteen, and she went on several war bond selling tours. On one of her tours, she became romantically involved with Sergeant John Basilone, a Medal of Honor recipient who was later killed in action in Iwo Jima. In fact, both Basilone and Gray showed up as characters in the 2010 HBO miniseries The Pacific.
Which is such a good miniseries if you haven't seen it.
Yeah, they are portrayed by John Seda and Anna Torv.
Well, meanwhile, Clark Gable returns to Hollywood to edit his film. Well, what happens? Does he get back together with Virginia? Is he in too much grief? What happens? Well, before we get into that, we're going to take a little break and we're going to give you our pop quiz question of the day.
And the question for this week is, Virginia Gray's father, Ray, who we mentioned was an actor and later an assistant director. Well, growing up, her home was often filled with actors and writers. What famous actress was one of Virginia Gray's first babysitters?
Ooh, this is good.
And it will blow your mind. We'll be right back with that and more about Virginia Gray after this.
Hey, Stephen Ann will be right back, but first another stop on the Hollywood tour. Believe it or not, Virginia Gray was not the only thespian in her showbiz family. Her younger sister, Lorraine, was also an actress and chorus girl. She appeared in movies like Stage Struck, 1936, Gold Diggers of 1937, and Rosalie, 1938. She even appears in an uncredited role in 1938's Dramatic School with her big sister. Lorraine happily retired from the movies in 1940 after marrying studio composer Ray Heindorf. Heindorf went on to be nominated for an Oscar, get this, 18 times, winning 3 times for Yankee Doodle Dandy, 1942, This Is the Army, 1943, and The Music Man, 1962. He also worked on classics like 42nd Street, 1933, Captain Blood, 1935, Rhapsody in Blue, 1945, Strangers on a Train, 1951, A Star is Born, 1954, and 1776, 1972. That's some pretty amazing DNA in the Gray family, huh? And now back to Stephen Ann from where else? Beneath the Hollywood sign.
Welcome back, everybody. Before we get further into the wonderful Virginia Gray's life and career, we're going to give a shout out to our listener of the week. And this week, it is Steve Sika. Now, Steve wants us to do an episode on Richard Basehart, which is, of course, music to my heart.
I
because
love him.
love Richard Basehart. And so we're definitely going to see if we can't do an episode on him soon.
Yeah.
So, Steve, thank you for the likes. Thank you for the support. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, Steve. We last left off where Clark Gable is distraught from his loss of his wife, Carol Lombard. He's come back from the war to edit this film that he's making, and he meets Virginia Gray once again. Now, it was December 20th, 1943. Marriage, of course, is the farthest thing from Gable's mind. He was happy to spend Christmas in the United States, though, when Jill Winkler, the widow of press agent Otto Winkler, who was Gable's closest friend and who also perished in the plane crash with Carol Lombard, invited him over for a little Christmas cheer. He was genuinely thrilled. And when he found out that Virginia Gray was there too, he was overjoyed.
I'll bet he was.
He rushed over to her, reportedly, picked her up in his arms, and gave her a big kiss. Gosh, he said, it's good to see you. And that was the beginning. They were soon seen all around town together, and speculation was rampant that she would become the next Mrs. Gable.
Because it seemed that Virginia Gray really understood Clark Gable. They were kind of cut from the same cloth. Kind of like Clark Gable, she was very down to earth. She was a no-fuss kind of gal. And
Right.
Clark Gable really loved that about her. It's similar qualities that he saw in Carol Lombard. Now,
Not high maintenance, in
not
other
high
words.
not high maintenance at all. But Gray did tend to mold herself into what she thought Clark Gable wanted. When asked by a friend one time why they weren't seen out on the town more and in public more, Gray reportedly said, I'm content doing anything he wants to do. If he likes fishing, I like fishing. If he wants to go hunting up in Bakersfield, I want to go hunting. If he wants to park the car at the airport and watch the planes come in, I want the same thing. It makes no difference to me whether we're seen in public or not. I just like being with him any place, anytime.
Okay, I think, can I just be the matchmaker here? I
Yes.
think that is a little bit of a problem because you're not really being your
Yes.
true self.
Yes, you can't just totally mold yourself into what they want. Yeah.
Right. I mean, you can certainly say, yes, you enjoy that, I'll do it with you. But yeah, that's my 2 cents.
No, I'm right there with you.
Yeah. Well, as her love life with Gable was taking off, her professional career seemed kind of stuck in a rut. Although she worked consistently at MGM, she never achieved that top-tier stardom there. Studio head Louis B. Mayer once told her, you have everything but luck.
Wow.
Yeah, that's tough.
That is so hard to hear, I'm
Yeah.
sure. She was very frustrated with her career, and she made a very, some people say brave, some people say stupid move, and she decided to leave MGM in 1942. That took some guts.
Right.
As a freelancer, she became a workhorse. She appeared in such a wide range of genres, which was so interesting because she was already versatile, and she really capitalized on that at various studios. She did westerns like Bells of Capistrano in 1942 with Gene Autry. She did musicals like Sweet Rosie O'Grady, 1943 with Betty Grable. She did crime dramas like Anthony Mann's Strangers in the Night, 1944 with William Terry. She did comedies like Blonde Ransom, 1945. She did horror movies, House of Horrors. She did adventure films like Unconquered in 1947 with Gary Cooper and Paulette Goddard. And, of course, film noir. She got to get those in there.
Right.
She did Leather Gloves, 1948 with Cameron Mitchell. And she even played leading lady to Abbott and Costello in Mexican Hayride, 1948. It was also in 1948 that she starred opposite Johnny Weissmuller in the film Jungle Gym, based on the popular comic strip. Of course, they were capitalizing on Weissmuller's Tarzan days, and he played the title character who tries to keep the greedy, corrupt white man from destroying their beloved jungle.
So her career is steady, and her relationship with Clark Gable is continuing. Most people, including Virginia Gray, expected them to walk down the aisle together, meaning dun 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 dun.
Yikes.
But they were wrong.
So wrong.
So according to her friends, no one was more shocked than Virginia when in December 1949, after a very brief courtship, Clark rather unexpectedly married socialite Sylvia Ashley, who had previously been married to Douglas Fairbanks Sr.
Oh, that must have just killed her.
I can't even imagine. She was rightfully so heartbroken, and she bitterly referred to Sylvia as Lady Ashcan in private. I mean, can you blame her?
You go, Virginia.
Yeah.
Gray did date Robert Taylor very briefly in the early 50s, and reflecting on their time together, she did say, "Bob was warm and wonderful. When we were together, I forgot he was Robert Taylor. He made me interested because he was so unpredictable. Also, I don't think Bob liked himself very much and was not a happy man when I knew him. He was a real introvert when it came to a man and woman relationship." Wonder what that meant.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, despite this brief romance with Robert Taylor, Virginia Gray never married, she never had children, and many people believed she always thought Clark Gable would come back to her. Heartbreaking.
That is heartbreaking. Well, continuing with her career, she kicked off the 1950s playing gangster Steve Cochran's gun moll in the underappreciated film noir Highway 301 in 1950. Her chemistry with Cochran is truly electric.
So electric. I love them together.
In 1951, she made what she considered one of her favorite films, the Western Slaughter Trail, where she was the leading lady to Gig Young. In an interview for WesternClippings.com, Gray recalled the complicated backstory to this film. Quote, "It was around the time Howard Hughes bought RKO Radio. Howard Da Silva was originally cast in the part Brian Dunleavy eventually did. Dunleavy was cast after Howard Hughes said Da Silva was a commie and was kicked off the picture. We reshot virtually the whole film."
Wow.
And doesn't that sound familiar?
Yes, it
with
does.
Howard Hughes? Because Howard Hughes didn't want commies in his movies. Such a reflection of the times, right?
It really is. Well, next up for Virginia Gray came a series of B-movies. There was Three Desperate Men in 1951 with Preston Foster, Captain Scarface, 1953 with Leif Erikson, and The 49ers, 1954 with Western star Wild Bill Elliott. They were probably as good as they sounded.
Yeah, I haven't seen any of those.
Me either.
Well, in 1955, she began her long association with producer Ross Hunter. He casts her in the Douglas Sirk-directed melodrama All That Heaven Allows, 1955, starring Jane Wyman and Rock Hudson. After this, Hunter came to see her as his lucky charm and put her in many of his movies. That same year, she made a splash as the mistress in The Rose Tattoo, starring Anna Magnani and Burt Lancaster and Marissa Pavan, which was a huge hit, and Magnani won the Academy Award as Best Actress. I think this role really reminded Hollywood how capable Gray was if she was given a good part, darn
Yes,
it.
because she was such a wonderful actress, but she didn't get always the best parts.
Yeah.
She's also quite good as the tragic rival actress in Gene Eagles, 1957, with Kim Novak and Jeff Chandler, and she is perfectly officious as Richard Basehart's assistant in Ross Hunter's Portrait in Black from 1960, which also starred Lana Turner and featured Anna May Wong's final film performance. In 1961, she had supporting roles in two A-list movies, two really good ones. In Backstreet, she plays the sympathetic sister of Susan Hayward, who, of course, Susan is involved with this married man played by John Gavin and his wife played by Vera Miles. And Gray was also also cast as Rosalind, the glamorous older woman in Flower Drum Song.
I mean, that's amazing to think of when she started, and now it's 61 and she's still getting these great roles, but she's not a household name.
She's not a household name, and she's not a top-tier star.
Yeah. Around this time, she began working quite a bit in television. She appeared in shows like The Ed Sullivan Show, Playhouse 90, U.S. Marshal, The Jane Wyman Show, General Electric Theater, Wagon Train, Bonanza, Marcus Welby, My Three Sons, The Virginians, Ironside, and many, many others.
It makes me want to go find those old episodes of like Bonanza and My Three Sons and try to find her episodes.
When we were kids, we probably watched it and didn't have any idea who she was.
Didn't realize she was the great Virginia Gray.
Yeah. From 1955 to 1966, she had a recurring role on The Red Skelton Show in a popular segment where she played Clara Appleby, the nagging wife to Skelton's dim-witted character, which I love.
By the 1960s, she had completely embraced character roles, which was so smart of her.
Yeah, very smart.
I think it elongated her career, which so many of the glamour pusses of that age, or that era, didn't want to appear old or ugly.
Right.
Consequently, their film careers didn't last as long, where Virginia embraced being a character actress and her career continued. You know, she's really good as Candy, the cat house madam, in Samuel Fuller's gritty neo-noir, The Naked Kiss from 1964. That scene where Constance Towers confronts and attacks her, it is still so shocking to this day when I see it. And also in Love Has Many Faces from 1965, which of course starred her old pal Lana Turner. A real standout is Virginia Gray and Ruth Roman, who are so wonderful and kind of sad as these two wealthy cougars whose empty lives reduced them to trying to seduce these young beach boys at this Mexican resort city. She portrays the pain and heartbreak of growing older alone so beautifully.
Well, her career starts to wane by the late 1960s, but her friend Ross Hunter keeps her working.
Good old Ross Hunter.
Yeah, he gave her the small role of a mother in his huge hit Airport in 1970 with that all-star cast that included Burt Lancaster, Dean Martin, Jacqueline Bisset, Gene Seberg, Helen Hayes, Van Heflin, and George Kennedy. Her final acting performance was in the TV miniseries The Money Changers, starring Kirk Douglas, Christopher Plummer, Ann Baxter, Jean Peters, Marissa Pavan, and Helen Hayes.
What a nice cast.
Yeah.
You know, after retiring from Hollywood, she eventually moved to the motion picture home in Woodland Hills, California. And it was there that she passed away of a heart attack at the age of 87 on July 31st, 2004. It's surprising to me that she does not have a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame.
Okay, we just need to raise
$85,000
dollars and get that
I know,
star.
but you know, to me, that's such an oversight.
I think you're right.
She absolutely deserves a star. She might not have become a major star, but to me, Virginia Gray was always a welcome addition to any movie, and she enjoyed a long, full career. And I love this. She sums up her own career and her contribution to the entertainment industry by saying, quote, "I consider myself a professional who acts, not to express my soul or elevate the cinema, but to entertain and get paid for it." And entertain as she certainly did.
Yeah, she did. And once again, I love that we get to highlight and introduce perhaps to people someone that they may not know and now can look for when you're watching classic cinema. I think it's time for this week's Hollywood Pop Quiz, and I'm going to remind everybody of what the question was. Virginia Gray's father, Ray, was an actor and later an assistant director, so growing up, her home was filled with actors and writers. What famous actress was once one of Virginia Gray's first babysitters?
Oh, and it's so good.
It's amazing. It's Gloria Swanson.
Can you imagine? I hope Gloria put turbans on her and just gave her cigarette holders
and said, "I'm
ready for my close-up."
Max, I'm ready for my close-up. Yes.
Who wouldn't love Gloria Swanson as your babysitter?
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Well, thanks everybody for listening. We would love it if you would give us a 5-star review, and please follow us on social media. Our handle is @FromBeneathTheHollywood Sign, and you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and you can watch the podcast on YouTube.
And we'd love to hear from you. Please keep those emails coming. You can email us at info@FromBeneathTheHollywoodSign.com.
That's this week's view.
From Beneath the Hollywood Sign.
You've been listening to From Beneath the Hollywood Sign with Steve Cubine and Ann McNamara, the podcast that celebrates amazing stories of Tinseltown from its golden era. Join us next week for another episode. and learn something else about Hollywood you probably never knew. Take a moment and give us a 5-star rating and a positive review, and tell your friends about us too. It'll help grow the podcast. Visit Steve's website at FromBeneathTheHollywoodSign.com. The executive producers are Steve Cubine and Nan McNamara. Executive producer and post-production supervisor Lindsay Schnebley. Associate producer and researcher John Price Ritchie. This podcast is part of the Airwave Media Podcast Network. Visit airwavemedia.com to listen and subscribe to their other fine shows like The Box of Oddities and The Shallow End with Schnebley and Toth. Copyright 2025. All rights reserved. That's a wrap.